The line in what Robert just read, when he quoted Master as saying the path to knowing God should proceed in this way, to always be actively calm and calmly active. It just literally reminded me of a story that I heard Davy tell about Swamiji, where one day there were a group of people in a car with him, and they were going skiing. Obviously, this was a lot of years ago. And Swamiji was driving himself, and it was snowing, and they were on Route 80 headed towards Tahoe. And the road was icy, and they hit a slid. They went into a slid. And the car just started turning and turning. And Davy said the woman who was in the back next to her just freaked out and started screaming, like, "Swami, Swami," just kept saying that. And the car was spinning. And finally, it hit a Greyhound bus, which is how it stopped. And when the car came to a complete stop, Swamiji turned around and he said, "What?" That is the definition of calmly active and actively calm. He was that definition, actually. He lived that, of course. And there's such a perfect convergence of events and activities this week, because with this reading at the center of it, activity versus inner communion. And of course, it's no secret. We've been hearing it for a long time. We know it. It's really not activity versus inner communion. It's activity with inner communion. So they're not opposed to each other. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita tells us, Krishna says it in many ways, but in one reading in particular, that you will never get to God just by being perfectly inactive. It's impossible. So we need to be active. And the question is, and the answer is, of course, in our reading, how can we do that, use that activity to get closer to God? I thought Chris's reading, which was so perfect, I thought, should I just ask him for that Whispers book and read it again? Because it is the talk today that was beautiful, and I appreciate your inspiration to read that. But this week started some days ago with my writing a letter and mailing out, at least to many of you, most of you, if not all of you, a letter saying that the Sangha, that means the whole temple, the whole community, really needs everyone's help right now. We need everyone to consider how they can come here and serve. And we sent out this letter with a Google Doc, and there's links for those of you who haven't responded yet. You just click on that little link, and it takes you to a place where you can decide how you'd like to serve. Now, it could look like we at the Sangha, the staff, are asking for something, and the Sangha does need some help right now. You know, it's a very, very particular time in this world. We've never quite been here before. And I've said this part before, but I want to add to it. It's been my feeling since the pandemic was lightening up. We all know it's kind of not lightening up again right now, so we're on this real roller coaster ride with it. But I think many of us around the whole world, we were thinking, when the pandemic's over, we'll just all get back to what we were doing. And in fact, that hasn't happened anywhere. I have clients who I see who are in so many different areas of service, education, medicine, nursing, tech. Everyone's telling me about the issues that they're having getting their services sort of back up and running. Nobody's coming back to what was. You know, we look at the rate of people who have decided to retire and people who really don't want to leave their homes. They've decided they loved being at home after all. We felt a little confined at first, but now we've gotten used to it. And Sai Ganesh was telling me the other day about this study, though I had been hearing similar things on the news, but he said one of the big tech groups did a study that showed for them production was down by about 40 or 50%, but what's being called COVID burnout, and I've been hearing about it, of course, it's in medicine, I've been hearing about it a lot, but COVID burnout is up 70 or 80%. So people are doing less, but the way they're experiencing the price tag of doing less is very high. Now, we, of course, from this reading, know what the problem is, and that is that people have worked their whole lives like Martha, very busy, chopping vegetables, getting the dinner ready, having to feed this whole, who knows how many people Jesus brought to this meal that night. I'm sure he wasn't traveling by himself. And there was a meal that needed to be put out. All of that had to happen. But when you do that, away from your relationship to the divine, when you do that without right attitude, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It drains energy because you're disconnected from the infinite source of energy. And the more connected we are to this infinite source of energy, mostly through meditation, but through all of the other techniques and practices, we don't get tired. We just simply don't get tired. I've said this before. I mean, it's a weird thing to imagine, but it's like a gauge about how attuned we are, really, our level of fatigue. And I mean general fatigue in life, not just one night we get tired or we've had a hard week, because, of course, most of us are on the path and most of us are trying and doing our best. But we've heard of these great saints who never sleep. They never sleep. And they're here to tell us everything I am, you are too. So imagine that. We could serve 24/7 and not be tired. I remember when I'm on such a tangent, I'm going to have to see if I can ever, I hope this is making any sense because everything's just coming here. But I've said this out loud here before when I was in medical training, which I've also said, and you all know, it's extremely challenging. It doesn't go the way it used to go, but I would every few days go 3 days without sleep. It's the way the schedule was. And it's not like you're just standing there not sleeping. You actually have people's lives in your hands. It's very stressful. I never gave up my meditation practice throughout all of medical school and training. And people used to say to me, how can you possibly find time to meditate? And I would say to them, how could you not? Because I knew that my meditation was plugging me in so that I could do everything that was being asked of me and do it pretty well. Whereas if you weren't plugged in, if you just thought the energy was coming from you, if that's how you live, you run out pretty quickly. You feel exhausted pretty quickly, or you feel limited. Remember when Swamiji was walking around Ananda village one day and he was looking around and saying to himself, look at what I've created. And then immediately he said, the thought came, does that feel good? He asked himself, no, that felt terrible. And he corrected himself, look at what Master has done. Look at what God has done. Because plugging into the infinite source and allowing that energy to flow through you in the form of anything and everything you're doing. So, sending out this letter about seva, it's not an ask, really. It's an offer. It's saying, come and be with us. Come to this temple. Who cares what you're doing here? You look at this altar all the time. You can play some music. It will help you more than most places you go in life to remember that not only are you serving God, but really, at its highest point, it's not even you. It's God serving God. That's pretty far for most of us, pretty far-fetched for most of us to get to that place where we keep remembering it is not me vacuuming this carpet. But until we can remember, if we're here vacuuming it with God, if we're saying, come on, let's do this together, it could be the high point of your life, of your week. And it could help you find energy for everything else that you're doing. I know this for sure because I've been there and I've done it. And it works. And I feel it intensely when I'm not doing it. I don't remember how long ago it's been since I've given this talk on this subject. Many years. I just know I haven't done it. But it was right around the time in the farm where we were moving some flowers from one place to another. I happened to be out there for the day. I forget I don't think they were daffodils, but maybe they were, it doesn't matter. But we were moving them. And it was a Saturday, and it was a long work day, and I was giving service the next day. And I remember this so clearly. I was just troubled, like Martha. Martha, you're, what are the words? Careful and troubled about many things. And that's where I was. I was like picking up the flowers saying, oh my God, I have to talk tomorrow. What am I going to talk about? I should be home. I should be doing the reading, preparing. And about 15 minutes into it, I said to myself, it's activity with inner communion. If you can get there right now in this farm, do this with God, you'll have your sermon. And I was able to move into it. I wasn't able to stay there. But very often, Master, let's put this flower here. Here you go, Master. You want a big drink of water? Everything's God. Just hold it that way. And it was a delightful day, and it was a delightful Sunday, though I don't remember it, but I do remember the feeling. Any time that we can remember that everything we're doing with this, with our dearest friend, the nearest of the near and the dearest of the dear, and that's what we're doing. Well, this convergence this week is this talk, that letter, inviting everyone to come and find some energy. Master himself said the spiritual path is basically fueled, driven by meditation and seva. And it's got to be a balance. If it's out of balance, you lose attunement. So you need to be meditating. We all do. That's the truth. And it's the effort. It's absolutely the effort. Doesn't mean you have to be able to sit in the silence for hours at a time. But we have to be making the effort. God hears that, finds that. That beautiful divine energy comes to us then. Just with the effort, God is watching the heart. And then seva. And those are Master's words. And then it was Rajasi's birthday, Rajasi Janakananda, Master's wonderful disciple, who was this amazing businessman. Amazing, and as David was saying yesterday when we had our Rajasi day yesterday. So in his spirit, we take a day out of the year and we come together and we serve in some place. We either do it here, yesterday we did it at the community, but it's with the spirit that Rajasi did it. Rajasi was a big businessman. He was so busy in his work that there were times where he couldn't make it to Encinitas or Mount Washington to see Master for a year. I was rereading some of the letters that Master was writing to Rajasi. I miss you. You've been saying you're coming and saying, but you don't come. And Now it's almost a year. Come for Christmas. You must be here for Christmas. The next letter was, okay, next Christmas. Because Rogers, he was busy, but he was busy with God. And he was serving God. And David was saying yesterday, and all the while he's trying to do it, he had a wife who was furious with him and nagging him about it. Now, we all know how hard that could be. She was not helping at all. In fact, quite the opposite. She was really pretty clear that Master had stolen her husband from her. And she was angry about it much of his life. But the point is, everything in that man's life he did with God and for God. Master said to him one day, I forget what they were talking about, don't you forget who did all of this for you, whether it was his time in Samadhi or the millions and millions of dollars that he made, eventually, which just all got channeled into SRF. What a beautiful disciple. He looked up at him and he said, I won't, Master. I know it was you. Just like a little boy. He was this big, important man. But he was just like Mary, sitting there, looking up into the eyes of her teacher. Really, just doing that thing which is needful and will never leave us. And we don't have to sit still to do it. We can do meditation in action if we remember. And then it's Swamiji's birthday on Thursday night. Swamiji was our perfect example of somebody who came to serve. That is what he did. Master told him, though, your life will be a balance of a great activity and meditation. It wasn't great. It was said better than that. I'm sorry, the words are leaving me. But intense activity and meditation. Swamiji said, but I don't want to be intensely active. And Master just said, basically, this is your karma. You will be. And what did Swamiji do with that? We'll hear more about it, sing more about it, talk more about it on Thursday night. There's a beautiful program planned for this. But everything Swamiji did, everything, every song that came through him, every word for every book that came through him, every community, clothing, photography, flowers, the way he built Crystal Hermitage, everything. He did knowing that Master was working through him. And he did it joyfully for God. And he was unattached to it. It's so remarkable to me. Just this morning, the thought came, many of us, if we knew that we were moving to live somewhere else, we would take certain special things. We would move things, pictures or little Mortis or something. No, Swamiji just moved from America to Italy to India. No attachment, just moving on, like everything he did was done in the name of God and there for God. Such beautiful energy, an example for us. So all of this this week, saying, look at what can happen. And we have so much here that is precisely like this story. We know Martha and Mary are they're parts of us, both of them. We have both of them in us. Mary represents that part of us that is on this path wanting to experience that state of cosmic consciousness, that state of oneness with the divine. And then we're often Martha, just out in the kitchen chopping vegetables and forgetting what we're doing here, whatever form the chopping vegetables take. But there they were. These were people who were very good friends of Jesus Christ. He used to go there all the time. He visited the three of them, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. He was such a good friend with Lazarus that he brought him back from the dead after 4 days. That's a pretty good friend. He cared about these people. He was always with them, or often with them. And their home was like a temple because of that. Paramahansa Yogananda said, not one person crossed his path whose karma it wasn't to do that. There was never, it wasn't just happenstance. If you met Yogananda, it's because you have that great good karma to do that. That's who we are. We don't think of it that way. They had their home. We have Ananda. That's our home. They had Jesus. We have Master. We had Swamiji. We are being called. We came in to be disciples of these great, great gurus, teachers. And our guru did not come in to live a life of leisure. He came to share a whole new teaching with the West. He was busy. That's a big job. And we are that busy as well, because we are here having passed by him, no accident. So we have a life of intense activity. That's what we do. And deep meditation. That's also what we do. And we have that great good karma. I heard a story, somebody said once that there was a story, or I don't know whether it was actually told, like by Vivekananda maybe, or it's just an image, that Ramakrishna was up in some high astral world, and he turns around, he looks at his disciples, he says, I'm going down, who's coming with me? And of course we all know Vivekananda, of course at least, raised his hand, probably many others. And it's funny, told like that, but it's the truth. Yogananda was there, and he said, I'm going in, who's coming with me? And Swamiji was there and exuberantly raised his proverbial hand. And so did we. We are all connected. So yes, we will be active. That's what we're here for. We will manifest like Swamiji did, but we will also meditate. And more important than anything, we will have right attitude. Now that's a big term. I've said this before. When Master talked about right attitude to his disciples, this is a quote from the discipleship notes that Swamiji took. He said, right attitude is so important on the path. I'm not just leaving it here in my talks. I'm going to make it a whole separate course. And when I looked further into that to teach about it, I found that place in Raja Yoga where Swamiji explains how right attitude is everything to get us onto the path and in our spirit, our astral spine. Right attitude is what allows energy to flow, kundalini to be released. I don't want to talk about it in that way right now. That'll come up again in this wonderful course we're starting called A Deeper Dive into the Essentials. You'll hear about it. And many weeks will be spent first on right attitude, because that's where it all begins, and in essence, it's where it all ends. Master said it would not be a mistake to say the right attitude is the most important thing on the spiritual path. That you can have right attitude, never study meditation, never study yoga, never do any of that, and you could find God in this life. But if you don't have right attitude, you could spend, this is Master speaking, not me, you could spend your life studying, practicing, and you will not have a divine experience. You may get some good karma. It's like we talk about every week in the festival, lower altars of good works. So if you're out there working, even if it's with ego, but it's good work, you'll get some good karma, but you won't find God. And we're here to find God. To find God, we have to remember who's doing it and what we're doing it for. We have to get our ego more and more out of the way. Sister Gyanamata, who's just trying to prepare for this talk, gave me the opportunity to open the book God Alone again. I love that book. I don't know how many times I've read it, What a great, great soul she was. But she said, it's fair to say that it is none of the physical activity that you're given to do. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here because I don't remember the words exactly, but it's not the physical work that you're given to do, and it's not the fatigue or the, I forget her word, but like that you might feel after you do it. She said, all the way through it, it's the attitude that you hold that matters. If you have right attitude, you could be out there planting one flower after another. You could be in here vacuuming. You could be cleaning the windowsills. You could be teaching a class, practicing whatever you practice in your outside lives. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Every act that we do becomes the perfect opportunity with right attitude. And right attitude is all about our path to God. It is the path to God. It's not just a good attitude, like having a good attitude. Okay, I'm going to work and I'm going to love it. That's good. We all love to work alongside of people like that. No, it's holding it up in the light of the divine and understanding that every effort we spend gives more, what is the word? Life in the end, till our gladness in life's ever new. Every effort. It's all about moving towards God, and it's a joyful journey. There's nobody else we'd rather do it with. If we remember, we have a great playmate, we have a good workmate, we have a good friend to bounce problems off of, and we're just moving closer and closer to our own true divinity as we do that. God bless you all.
Let's meditate a short time together.